Some of us in here are older than some of the others, and some of us hear better, see better, other things better than others. Okay, so this is Dee Dee Spencer and Ben Spencer. Have any of you heard anything about their story other than just what the blurb that was written on the FPW invitations? A lot of you. Have any of you not heard of them ever? Okay, well, where have you been? No, I'm kidding. Okay. So I will tell you that I've known Dee Dee for almost 20 years, and I thought I knew her, and we all thought we knew her, but obviously, as you're going to hear, you did not know her that well. And so I'm just going to turn it over to Dee Dee, and I'll let them give the story, and then if there's anything left over, I'll give you the rest of the story whenever we finish, okay? Speak up, Dee Dee.
Good afternoon. I'm Ben Dee Spencer, and this is my husband, Ben Spencer. And my husband was put in prison 34 years ago for a crime that he did not commit.
A murder.
Okay. For a crime he did not commit.
She needs the mic. Can you give her the microphone? I thought that. There you go. Can you turn it up any longer? Can you turn her mic?
It didn't work.
Okay, all right. Hold it up to your mouth. Hold it close.
No, thank you.
That's
Yes, I
good.
can.
That's better.
Okay, my husband was put in prison 34 years ago for a crime he did not commit. So, our spiritual journey will take you through what we went through until he was released. Ben and I had been married 2 months. I was 7 months pregnant, and he was snatched away from my life, just like that. And when I got home, I thought he had been arrested for probably tickets. But when he called home that night, he told me that he had been arrested for capital murder. Capital murder. Okay, so Ben went through 2 trials. In the middle of, before the second trial started, he was offered a plea bargain. And he turned it down because he wanted to fight for his right. So he went through the second trial, and he was told before he turned down the plea bargain that if they try you again, you're gonna get life. So Ben was like, you know, whatever they give me, I'll just take it. So he got found guilty and received a life sentence. Okay, not long after Ben was sent to prison, I was diagnosed with cardiomyopathy.
Wow.
And I found out that was from a broken heart.
Wow.
I would always cling to the verse that the Lord is close to the brokenhearted.
She's gonna whap you.
Actually, let me figure where I was.
Broken heart.
Okay, broken heart. Loneliness became my best friend. I held my secret. I held what happened to our lives to myself for a long time. But that one night that when Ben called and told me that he had been arrested for capital murder, I couldn't sleep. And I ended up waking up about 2:30 or 3, and I was like, who can I talk to? So I ended up calling my best friend, Terry Bradshaw. She's here with us. When I told Terry about what was going on, I swore her to secrecy, and she held on to that secret. Later on in years, around 2005, I was at church working, and I was sitting in the basement, and the choir was rehearsing right over where I was working, and they were singing hymns. So I could hear them clear, very clear. So I asked God, I said, you know, you've been gone all this time, where are you? Is this where you want me? and I ended up joining the choir. I think I missed something. After the weekend away with friends, I was forced to tell my little crew that I hang with about Ben's situation. And I was told that if I didn't share the secret, that she would, my best friend, Laurie, would tell them. So we sat down and told them what was going on with Ben. We had no idea that he was about to go to court or anything. So when I got home, I laid down on the floor, prostrate, and I just went to the Lord. I was like, you've got to do something now, because I'm about ready to take my life. And I just cried, and I was like, you need to do something right now. And 2 weeks later, we went to court, and Ben came home on a PR bond, which is a personal recognizance bond. And that's when I had my encounter with God. I just thanked him for revealing himself to me, because had he not done it then, I wouldn't be here.
As you all know already, my name is Benjamin Spencer, and the year was 1987, March 26, 1987. I was awakened by police who were knocking at the door, and during the encounter I asked, could I help the police that was on my porch, and they was like, you're under arrest. And I said, whatever for? Because I hadn't done anything, hadn't been in any trouble, didn't have any outstanding tickets or anything. So he said, I'll tell you in a minute, but you need to turn around and face the wall. So they began to search me, put handcuffs on me, placed me in the car. And after placing me in the car, the investigator went around to the driver's side and sat in the driver's side, put his arm over the back of the seat and looked over the seat at me and said, did you hear about the white man they found in the street the other day? I said, yeah, I heard that they found a white man in the street the other day. He said, well, that's what you're under arrest for, his murder. You're being charged with capital murder. I said, you have the wrong guy. That wasn't me. At that time, he began to explain to me that some of my neighbors had supposedly told them that they had seen me on the night of the offense walking around with a jam box that had a TV on it, showing it off. And I said, a jam box with a TV on it? Why would I have a jam box with a TV on it? I don't have a need for a jam box with a TV on it. I have 2 cars. Both my cars have systems in it. I have a system in my house. I don't do any walking. What I'm going to do with a jam box, I don't know, but that's what you're under arrest for, his murder. I was taken to jail, questioned, after profusely telling him that I didn't commit this crime, for hours telling him I didn't commit this crime, what I had done the day of the offense, who I'd been with the day of the offense. After checking all those things out, he returned and said, well, none of these people know you. And I said, that's impossible, because I work at this company, and I was with this young lady at the time. So he told me none of the people knew me that I had told him to talk to. And so I was charged with capital murder. Subsequently was tried 7 months later, was tried for murder instead of capital murder, was convicted of murder, was sentenced to 35 non-aggravated years, and that's important because aggravated means you do more time, flat time on the sentence than you do on a non-aggravated sentence. So with 35 years, I would have been eligible for parole in less than 5 years had I stuck with this 35-year sentence. That verdict was taken back by the judge when I was granted a new trial, because it was found that one of the witnesses who claimed she didn't know anything about a reward, wasn't interested in a reward, found out that she had called Crime Stoppers as opposed to the investigator she had testified. So I was granted a new trial based on that. During the second trial, I only took a second trial because, again, this was my opportunity again to try to prove my innocence, something that I was never supposed to have to do in the first place, because the state is obligated to prove your guilt, not you prove your innocence. However, I saw it as another opportunity to prove my innocence, and hoping that a jury would see this time that I was innocent. Unfortunately, the jury convicted me. I was sentenced to life for aggravated robbery. which meant I had to do 20 years flat before I would even be eligible for parole, before I could even think about parole. In the year 2007, which is actually the same year that I would have been eligible to make parole, after doing 20 years, I was bench warranted back to Dallas County. We have an evidentiary hearing in which the judge, Rick Magnus, made a ruling that I should be granted relief on actual innocence. That ruling or that opinion was sent up to Austin, to the Court of Criminal Appeals in Texas, who has the final say. The district judge doesn't have the final say in criminal matters, so it went to the Court of Criminal Appeals, where they, I guess, sat on the case for like 3 years, and I sat in the county jail for 3 years, and eventually I asked to go back to the county jail because I got tired of sitting in the county jail, looking at life pass me by, and I wasn't free. And so I went back to the county jail. Yeah, went back to the prison. Probably within 4 to 5 months after going back to prison in 2010, in 2011, the Court of Criminal Appeals finally made a ruling, which they denied the relief that the judge, Rick Magnus, said I deserved on actual innocence. So we began to look for ways that we could again get my case back in court. And at that time, during all this, I'm praying that God will open the hearts of man to do the right thing in this matter. However, I'm not going to say my prayers was falling on deaf ears, but God has a way of working things out in the end, and we don't know the end. We just know what we're praying for. We know what we're hoping for. And so our journey began to try to find ways in which we could get my case back in the court. And eventually we were able to come up with a few witnesses that we hadn't talked to previously who knew more about the offense, knew more about Gladys Oliver and the reward money. And eventually it led to my being released in 2021, March 12, 2021, on a personal recognizance bond. As we again would have to wait on the Court of Criminal Appeals to make a final ruling on the opinion that was given this time. And what was different this time than the first time was the second time when we came back, the district attorney's office joined us in our writ, which didn't happen the first time. The state followed us all the way through the Court of Criminal Appeals the last time. But this particular time, the district attorney's office not only joined us, but they were very proactive in turning over evidence that we had never had access to previously. So the new administration was real instrumental in turning over things that had been kept under wraps previously, which eventually led to my release. And again, I was released on March 12, 2021. 3 days later, I found myself, 2 days later, Sunday, I found myself at First Baptist and experiencing the joy and the beauty of the people there and being able to fellowship. And it was just a beautiful thing, and that's where I reside even today.
Okay, gosh, y'all got to get the book. There's so much in between all that he said, but you did a great job in summarizing that up, or Dee Dee did a good job in helping you with that, whatever. Okay, so now you did hear, he was in prison for 34 years for a crime he did not commit. He had 2 trials where he was convicted of a crime he did not commit. So Ben, we want to ask you a few questions here about more of the spiritual journey. I mean, the legal journey is unbelievable, but the real story begins now with the spiritual journey. Ben, what went through your mind that first night when you realized you were really in trouble? You were being put in prison and you had no idea how long you'd be there or what would happen.
Well, I grew up going to church and I knew about God. believe I had a relationship with God and my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. So that night I began to pray that the truth would prevail in this matter. I prayed that the investigators who had arrested me, that they, during their investigation, they would find information that would eventually lead to my release. That didn't happen.
Ben, did you ever get angry or just act out or so frustrated that you just couldn't, did you ever feel like you just couldn't take it anymore?
Not at all.
Wow, it's amazing.
Because I was a firm believer that God eventually was going to work things out. And again, you know, we want God to act immediately in our lives, but the reality is that things sometimes takes a little time, a little longer than we want it to.
You and Abraham kind of got something in common there. I mean, you know,
That's the truth.
or Moses, even worse than Joseph. You know. Okay, Ben, how did it feel at the time knowing that Dee Dee was out there? She was going to live her life without you. You had a little boy that was growing up, and you were innocent in prison. Did you keep a connection with Dee Dee and your son, and how did that go?
That was probably the most difficult part of being locked up. I mean, being incarcerated, you're separated from everyone that you love, whose lives you've been a part of, so you're separate from that. But my relationship with BJ, I mean, he was, when I was convicted the second time, I believe he was like almost a year old. He was almost a year old at the time. But Deborah, you know, she would come visit me. She would bring him to visit me. Even after I went to prison, she would come visit me and bring BJ. And over the process of time, it started getting a little hard for me. And I was just imagining what it was like for Deborah. So I began to ask her, after a few years and things didn't transpire where my appeal worked out, where my appeal was granted and I got out, which was what I was thinking would happen after I was convicted. But after the appeal was denied, in I think it was in 1989 that it was denied, I began to ask Deborah to go on with her life. I asked her to divorce me and to go on with her life, because I didn't feel that I could be much of a husband. You know, a husband is supposed to be a provider, a protector, and there's nothing I can provide from prison. There's no way I can protect her from prison. And so I asked her to go on with her life.
Okay. Oh, okay. We'll do it at the end. Okay. I know we all have so many questions. I'll try to fill in a little bit of that. So she did end up, because he told her, I mean, he really, and this is a love thing, that he realized he wasn't going to get out of prison, so he told her to go ahead and get a divorce. And they did. And the real beauty of that is when he got exonerated, they ended up remarrying on the anniversary of their first wedding. So, yeah. 35 years later, they were reunited, and it felt so. Okay. All right. Ben, did you ever feel completely alone, or did you feel like you were forgotten? Did you just feel like the whole world was going on and you were just stuck there forever? Look over this way.
I don't know that I ever felt all alone. I mean, I was surrounded by people, but I guess I was alone in that, even though I was surrounded by other inmates, individually I was without my family. I was out without my friends, relatives. So yes, I was alone, but did I ever feel alone? No. I always felt embraced by the Holy Spirit, that God was walking with me through this journey. So that was the beauty of it. If I hadn't, I believe had I not grown up in church, things would have been a lot different for me.
Yeah. Sure.
as a father yourself, well, I mean, he's already answered. The guy never got mad at me. My husband could not get over Ben. He would just say, how did he not? I mean, I had anger and bitterness. We all did at the injustice. And Ben's about the only one who didn't feel that way. So shame on us. Okay. Yeah, the power of the Holy Spirit. Okay. Hey, Ben, can you tell us just a very few things in prison that you did that you feel that helped you to be a better person after you got out?
Okay. So after I was arrested in 1987, I began to ask this question in the county jail: why is this happening to me? Why me? That's a question we all ask ourselves when things transpire in our lives we don't understand. Why me? So I began to ask myself that question: why me? And as a child growing up, I'd always admired ministers, someone who could preach the Word of God, and I wanted to be a preacher. And so when I would question myself, why me? The voice in my head would always say, you said when you grew up you was going to be a preacher. And so I asked for a Bible from the chaplain. And the chaplain sent me a Bible. I started reading it, and of course I was getting much understanding out of the Bible. It just seemed like a bunch of words on a page that didn't make sense. And I grew up hearing the Bible, being taught the Bible. But at this period in time in my life, it made no sense. Nothing resonated. So I began to pray about that. I said, well, God, if this is what you want for me, I need you to open my understanding. Enlighten me through your word. And I began to pray that prayer fervently, daily. And the more I prayed, the more I read, the more I began to understand, the more I began to discern the Word of God. And it was that discernment that helped me through the years of incarceration, because I developed a relationship with God that embraced me and helped me through this journey. Despite the fact that I was incarcerated, I was okay, because I was at peace, because the reality is, though man had found me guilty of a crime I didn't commit, God knew the truth. I knew the truth.
Yeah.
And with that, I was content.
He didn't go to Dallas Theological Center. He went straight to God, to seminary. That's pretty amazing. Okay, Ben, while you were in prison, I've heard from, we've been to several events where he was in prison with other men that have since gotten out or been exonerated, and they all, every single one of them, would talk about Ben and how he lived his life, and what a testimony that was to them. So can you tell us a little bit about, were you able to share the gospel while you were in prison? Did you go to church while you were in prison?
I did. I even taught and did some of the sermons during Sunday services. Yeah.
Wow. Didn't you get your associate's degree? Did you? And you learned how to cut hair? Yes. You do that for free now? Or just kidding. Okay. So, is there something else you want him to add, Dee Dee? You want him to add something else? Okay. She wants you to add. The wife said.
Okay. So let's go back to 1988. Well, let's go back to 1987. October 87. I can't remember the exact date. I think it was the 29th or the 30th. I was found guilty of murder. I was sentenced to 35 years. It wasn't so bad because I knew I was going to come back, because I had an appeal, and then I was granted a new trial. During the new trial, I was granted they told me they were willing to make a plea offer with me for 20 years. And with 20 years, I could have did like 1.5 to 2 years and been eligible for parole, which I refused to take because, again, I was innocent of the offense. After going through the second trial, I was tried and convicted of aggravated robbery and was sentenced to life. And that night was my only night of despair, because I could not see the end of a life sentence. And at that point in time in our lives, in 1988, everyone, I believed that the world would end in 2000. 1999 was here.
Here we are.
So there was no way that I was ever going to see freedom again. And I wanted to die. And I can remember I was taken to a holdover cell. It was like maybe 5:30 in the evening, 6 o'clock. It was late. And I remember I was the only one in the holdovers because everyone else, all the other courtrooms had closed, and all the inmates had been taken up to their cells and tanks and back to the jails they were housed in. And so I'm in a holdover by myself, and I wanted to die. I literally wanted to die. I even contemplated and thought about hanging myself in that cold holdover cell. And my faith kept me from tying up the tie and hanging myself there, which turned out to be a good thing, because when I went back to my tank that night, I would always call Deborah when I got in, and of course Deborah didn't sit in the trials because she was supposedly going to testify, so she couldn't sit in the courtroom, and so she didn't know what was going on or what had happened. So I called her that evening after being sentenced to life, and I can't remember all the details of what we talked about, but what sticks out in my mind is this conversation. I brought up God is going to work, God's going to fix this, God's going to work it out. And I hear a voice screams through the phone, there is no God. And that really hurt me. I mean, it struck me real deep. And so I'm like, wait a minute, don't say that. There is a God, there is a God. There is no God, there is no God, there is a God, there is a God. There is no God, there is no God, because if there was, he wouldn't have allowed this to happen to us. And at that time, I began to try to explain to Deborah that there is a God. And I explained to her that since my arrest, I had prayed that the truth would come out. I said, now you have to understand that it's not that the truth did not come out in this case. I say the truth was right there. All the jury had to do was listen and agree and accept the truth. I say, so there is a God. God did his part. The truth came out. I say, but what you have to understand and realize is that there's another entity at play here. I say, and we know him as Satan. I said, so Satan has blinded the eyes and hearts of those who sat in judgment, and they believe the lie rather than the truth. So we can't put that on God. So that's the story that Deborah wanted me to share.
Ben, I forgot what I was going to ask you. It was really a good question. I just thought of it. So, had this not happened to you at that time, all these experiences, do you think you would be the same man you are today? And would your life have turned out as it has, or do you think it would have gone another path?
I would say probably not. It probably would have went in a different path.
Okay. All right. So, so the man who was murdered had children, and of course Ben had a son too. So Ben, during that time, did you ever think about if someday you were able to meet the man who was murdered son? Did you ever think about what it would be like to meet his family or anything?
I always hoped that I would meet the family, and I'd always hoped that one day that they would accept the truth that I was innocent.
Okay. At this time, we'd like to call Jay Young, the victim's son, up to the stage here. I know. Okay, Jay. It's showtime. Jay was in the courtroom the day Ben was exonerated. Actually, he was on the same pew with us. We were always, that's the guy's son here, He walked in very quietly and just sat there. Of course, you didn't know what you thought at that point. And anyway, tell us how you felt that day.
First, it was my 50th birthday.
Oh, that's
So I was, a lot of things were going through my head. One was, God, why are you doing this on my 50th? Selfishly.
Oh, yeah.
But then I kept telling myself that there must be a reason, right? Obviously, I always remember my 50th. I mean, I did say a few times, out of all the birthdays and days, you had to pick this one day. We're all selfish at sometimes, so. But I also felt that there was some meaning to it. And at that point, I was pretty convinced that Ben didn't do it. Honestly, I was convinced years before that, but I never really could admit that. We had people in the press call us and different things, and I never wanted to say what I thought or any confusion, because I knew that that would open up the storm. And our family, pretty much, we have a big family. My dad has one brother and 4 sisters, and they were very involved in all the parole hearings and different things. But I always felt like it was more of a collective, and we would have our discussions internally, and then we would be very tactful or strategic about our responses. And the thing that I kept saying was, we believe in the justice system, because if he was ever let out, whether it's parole or how it is now, you know, somebody would ask us, do you still believe in the justice system? Well, yeah. So we were just very careful how we responded, because our work, there was a lot of things that got twisted out of context, but anyway, so.
Jay, how would you say, living with the knowledge that you knew your father was murdered, and how old were you when he was murdered?
I was 12.
Okay, you were 12 years old. How did that affect you in your belief system during those years?
Well, I was the oldest, so I felt immediately I was the man of the house. And my dad was 33, my mom was 33, so that's very young. And I had a younger brother and a younger sister, but I was very close to my dad. And at first, it was obviously weird, but I was supposed to be there. And that Friday, at the last minute, it changed, because it was spring break and I was going to stay home with my dad. And then it switched, and I was out of town and then came back because of everything. So it was always that I wasn't going to have my dad. It wasn't like really who did it. At first I thought it was a car accident, the way I was told. My 2 grandfathers told me there's been an accident, and all I could see in my head was him having a car accident, and then the next day they said no. They kind of told me what happened, and then I would hear conversations, and so just a lot of confusion.
So, Jay, whenever you finally learned and you believed the truth about really what happened the day you sat in there, you'd never met Ben before when you were on the day of his exoneration. You had to sit there and listen to the judge and take all this in. How did God begin to do a work in you at that time?
I mean, looking back, God started doing work in me before I even realized it. And I always struggled with my faith, and it was always a why me. And we've all had those, just like Ben said, we've all had those moments. You said when I believed, I never fully believed that he did it. I was just told that he did. So the older I got, the more I looked into things, I would ask questions. And a lot of times people would just say, it was just uncomfortable. Like my family, we never really, my mom and brother and sister, we never really sat down and had a discussion, which was weird. And, but, I always thought God hated me, really, until I was older, and but I just didn't really trust anybody. Didn't trust anything, didn't trust anybody. I played sports, and that's where my anger would come out. But other than that, I didn't want to be a bad person. I knew that I could have gone a different path. So, but the relationship I had with my dad and the type of man he was, you know, I didn't want to let him down.
Can you tell us a little bit about your dad or who he was?
Yeah, he was just goofy. He really was, and he didn't have an enemy. He worked really hard, and he also worked at being a dad really hard. He did love my mom very much. You know, and one of the conversations I remember the most was the Christmas before he died. Me and him were on a walk, and we did talk about death. And yeah, I didn't think anything of it at the time, obviously. But I asked him, if anything ever happens to you, would you want you want mom to get remarried? And quickly he said, absolutely. And I was just like, wait a second. I'm in 6th grade. I was in the mindset of don't look at my girlfriend. I'm in 6th grade. You know. And then I kind of asked him, I said, well, if anything happens to mom, would you get remarried? And she goes, yeah. And he said, because we love each other and we want each other to move on. And that's what taught me what love was. You know, and a couple other things happened the week before he died, but those were the things that I remembered instantly, you know, and thankfully I had that conversation. And it's kind of guided me with relationships. Now I still haven't, I had an issue with trust, but deep down, that main conversation taught me what love was. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Wow, sweet.
Okay, do y'all remember back when Ben said, when he gave names of people who could have been his alibis, they all claimed they didn't even know him?
Yeah.
And then the woman, the main lady who didn't seem to know anything about it until she found out she could get $25,000. And that's when she gave her story. And now, is she still alive? Or she did have dementia, I think, then. And so, anyway, wow, what a God story. Okay, so being here now with Ben and Dee Dee, and obviously they have become very good friends. And so how do both of you think, what word could you give to all of us who are harboring anger or, you know, any kind of issues like that? How could you say that choosing trust and faith over fear has changed both of you?
Before we answer that, I wanted to bring up one more thing, and I guess it kind of relates to everything, really. You know, at that time I was struggling with my faith, and okay,
Yeah.
sorry. And I started working with a pastor up at my church, and just asking all these questions. How do you know God's talking to you? Different things like that. And I was talking to him about the book that was released, and we were talking about it, and he was just like, oh, you know, obviously the condolences and just, you know, different questions. And then we were about to leave, and he goes, oh, hey, by the way, I met a guy at church who works with exonerees. And up until this point, I always wanted to meet Ben at some point. And so didn't think anything of it. And about a week or two later, I'm up at church serving, and the pastor texted me, he said, hey, that guy's here. Come up to the lobby. And I was just like, first of all, I was like, what guy? I was like, okay. So then I go up there, and make a long story short, it was one of Ben's groomsmen in his when he remarried Deb. And we were talking to the guy, and he brought up Ben's name, and he said, Ben Spencer, and I just kind of was like, what? And then he goes, are you Jeff Young's son? And I go, who are you?
Yeah.
And we walk away, and my pastor goes, you've always asked how do you know God's here and God's talking to you. He goes, everybody in the lobby can hear him talking to you right now. Wow. And after that, we worked on trying to get together for a few months, and it ended up working out. He came up to my church, and you know, it was pretty special. Wow. So sorry to take away from that question you asked, but I just want everybody to
No, I want you to do that. Okay, so Ben, if you knew these were the last words you were going to get to speak to a group of women about your faith, or men, there are 2 or 3 men here. If you knew this would be the last recorded thing that you would be able to talk about or speak about, what would you want to leave with every person in here?
I would say no matter how dire your situation may seem, no matter how complex, you just have to continue to trust and have faith in God, because He is. We can't see Him, sometimes we can't feel Him, but He's there. He may not show up when we want Him to, but He knows exactly when. So we just have to continue to have faith, have trust in God. Marilyn had started to ask a question earlier, and I kind of want to answer that. The people who lied on me, they weren't strangers. They were 3 neighbors. The only stranger was an inmate who testified that I had made a confession to him that never had been made. But the other 3 were neighbors. They were people I knew. They were people I helped occasionally. Before I knew who they were, I had started praying for them. And so my response to Marilyn's question is, if you have an enemy today, someone you don't like, someone you dislike, you don't care much for, start praying for them. Be sincere in that prayer. Be authentic. It's hard. You'll find it's hard to hate someone or dislike someone that you're earnestly praying for and you seriously mean it.
Anybody want to say wow? Every time I hear this story, I'm wowed. I better start praying now and plan on it for the next several days. Okay, so thank y'all so much. Ben and Dee Dee will be over here at this table. They have a few books if you want to know the rest of the story. And also, oh wait, Jay, you want to say something else?
Yeah,
Oh, good,
I just
okay.
wanted to add,
Yeah.
don't wait. Today might, I listen to Billy Graham all the time, and something he always talks about is you might not ever have another chance to go to God, and don't wait. To go along with what Ben said, if you have enemies or people that you dislike, think about what you've done to make that relationship struggle, and don't always point the finger at them. But don't wait to get rid of some resentments or forgive, because you might not ever have another chance.
And that's so true, because there's been times when I felt that I was right. I probably was right. But
Every time.
but it doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt to be wrong, And so what I was trying to say, there's been times when I was incarcerated where people didn't know me. They just didn't like me for whatever reason. But I would take the opportunity to try to get to know them. And once they got to know me, they were like, "Man, you're not the person I thought you were." And so sometimes, like what Jay was saying is, sometimes what is it we can do to make the relationship better? Sometimes it's not always them. Sometimes it's us. And if it's not us, we can pretend that it is and go to them and say, whatever the issue is between you and us, can we resolve it? Can we put that behind us and move forward? It's easy, simple.
Well, he wanted to be a preacher, he thought, when he was growing up and when he was in prison. I think he's a pretty good preacher, don't y'all?
Amen.
Yeah, that was great. Thank y'all, gosh. So Ben and Dee Dee, every month that we have a speaker, we like to give a little gift for you. It's not much, but it's best we can do. But we let the speakers choose whoever they wanted to go to, or what agency or ministry or whatever. And I believe y'all have chosen the Innocence Project for yours. So that is for you all. And it's 1 o'clock. I wish we could stay 2 or 3 hours more, because I know everybody has lots of questions. But so over here at the book table, y'all can meet them. You'd be glad to sign their book, I'm sure. If they, Yeah, we have a few. If not, you can get this, you can go to Amazon and buy the book. And we just really appreciate you all coming. They would never tell this, but they're in the process of making a documentary out of this. They're traveling. He has gone to Harvard, I believe, and not Harvard. Okay, well, a lot of law. I thought it was law school up to somewhere.
We've done Notre Dame, University of Florida, Williams College. We've done some events, but not
Yeah.
Harvard.
Okay, not yet. Okay. Well, anyway,
Going to Baylor,
you're going to Baylor.
yeah, March.
Okay, great. A lot of the work they're doing is like the injustice of how the court system let them down. But today it was totally emphasized on the spiritual part. And so get the book, and it's intriguing, and you can hear the rest of it.